Hey everybody, welcome to the Data Driven Real Estate Podcast. Today we've got Tarl Yarber. He is the CEO of Fixated Real Estate LLC. It's a Pacific Northwest investment company with over 50 million in single-family residential properties purchased, rehabbed, and resold over the last 7 years. He is also the founder of PNW Big Badass Real Estate Expo, which is happening in September, which you won't want to miss, and we'll talk about later. But this week we really talk about scaling operations. So the data on the operations side, not as much on the acquisition. We talk about technology that Tarl and his very small team has employed, and how focusing on the data increased profitability, simplified life, but also helped him focus in on a buy box where he was able to get more tightly focused in a much smaller geographical area. Won't want to miss this week on the podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Data Driven Real Estate Podcast, the podcast for real estate professionals dedicated to driving business success using data. I'm co-host Aaron Norris. With us was Sean O'Toole with PropertyRadar and Tarl Yarber. Welcome, Tarl.
Thanks for having me.
Well, awesome. We met at the San Francisco or the Bay Area Real Estate Summit, and I got to listen to you talk. And, I thought it was a great talk and just led me to a lot of questions and stuff that I thought would be great for the data-driven real estate podcast that we do here. So thank you for joining us.
Are you sure it was my talk or my eyes or the tone of my voice that intrigued you the most? Or
Yeah. No, I was looking deeply into your eyes. No question.
I thought so. I know you talked with my acquisition guy, Nate, for a little while. So he liked hanging out with you and talking to you. So I don't know if Nate had anything to do with you liking us also, but who knows?
It was mostly your wife.
Oh yeah. I don't blame you there. Right.
Yeah. She's awesome too. Yeah. No, you got a great team. And I think Serena was with you guys too. And yeah. So I don't know how much of that your total team that was, but everybody I met, I liked a lot. Very
cool. Glad to hear. Yeah. I'll let them know.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. So that talk was on creating processes and procedures, right? And I know you did another one in the Bay Area, simplifying and scaling your business. And, it occurred to me, we hadn't launched the Data Driven Real Estate Podcast yet, but I was thinking about it at the time. And we're very focused on the acquisition side of Data Driven here at PropertyRadar. And it occurred to me that you were very focused on the data-driven side of the operations and building and scaling. And, that's an important part of this too. And I thought you'd be a great person to speak to that because I was pretty impressed with what you had to say and the kinds of things you were doing in your business.
Thank you.
So we can, we could jump into this a number of different ways and, but let's first tell us just a little bit about Fixated Real Estate. And how long you've been doing this, and
Sure. So Fixated Real Estate officially became a business in 2014. Although I got started in real estate in 2005, I bought a seminar on how to wholesale real estate from a sell-a-thon, and basically there's 40,000 people in LA at the time, and Donald Trump was a keynote, and so was Robert Kiyosaki and all those guys. I'm like, I gotta go, and I was like 20 years old. So went there, had no idea what sell-a-thon was, bought a seminar on wholesaling real estate, assignment contracts, did that for about 6 straight months, pretty hardcore, made $100,000 on one transaction and then quit because I hated every minute of it. And didn't get back into it till 2011 through a series of events. And if you guys go to Bigger Pockets and listen to episode 189 of their podcast, I tell the whole story there. Not enough time to get into this, but ultimately at the end of the day, between 2011 and now we've done a little over 600 fix and flips, probably about 640, 650, something like that, single family homes. And it's been interesting. Fixated Real Estate then got started in 2014 because between 2011 and 2014, I had a partnership that we did a ton of stuff nationwide. And then 2014, past that, we've been mostly in the Puget Sound area, Seattle, Tacoma market, and Portland over here in our neck of the woods, the Pacific Northwest. Prior to that, we were in about 7 states. And then we consolidated when we got to Fixated only. So that's us.
That's funny. When I first started flipping, I had wasn't national, but I had a 2-hour rule. And then the more deals I did, the closer that diagram got. Is this okay? I don't want to deal with this stuff so far away.
There's a lot of stories what happened between 2011 and 2014 that led to me starting my own business and leaving the partnership. But there's reasons why we're in other states, and it's a lot to get into, but I never want to go back to that again. So let's just put it that way. But yeah.
Nice to be local. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good. And so, and you mentioned 650 fix and flips. So just fix and flips. Do you hold rentals and stuff as well?
So yes, now. So get this. So at the end of 2017, we were 500 something properties or whatever, and I had 0 rentals. So we just flipped. That's it. And I had that mentality stuck in my head that like, I make 60 grand when I sell this thing right now as a flip, or I can make $300 a month cash flow on it. Why the hell would I keep it? But I didn't really understand anything else. Like it was just transactional based. I know this is not part of this podcast, but I had a wealth mentality issue because I was really focused on not being broke and making income versus building any wealth. I didn't really understand the difference internally because I grew up super broke. And so it kind of, a whole bunch of stuff came to a head at the end of 2017 that woke me up to realize I need to start keeping these properties, plus also start changing my lifestyle. So that way we can travel, have a lot more fun. My wife and I could be together all the time. And we actually scaled back and systemized the hell out of our business at the end of 2017 so that we can travel anytime. I could run my entire business from my phone. And then we started keeping properties. We only got about 22 single families now that are rentals that are ours, but they're all for full BRRRR properties, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So they all got high equity. We have very little into them, if at anything at all. Very low loan to values, and they all cash flow. So those are the ones we keep, which is they're essentially flips that we decided to keep, right? So that's
yeah.
it.
Yeah, you're right. That is such a hard thing for flippers. And, you hear that from every flipper, right? Like it's, okay, I get all this income now or this little tiny bit of income, but yeah, it's a tough transition. So congratulations for making it happen.
Yeah, you pay less taxes too. So that's the other part.
Yeah. True story. My father was the same way. He was a flipper for many years, and I think he started very late in his career because he ran into some old timers. And you might have run into some of the old timers that they basically make fun of you if you flip.
So I did not feel like a real investor until 2019. We did our first 1031 exchange, and when we did that, I'm like, I get it. Like, I actually understand why people do this. Like, this makes a lot of sense. Why? Because I never understood why somebody would buy a 5 cap or something like that on a property. I'm like, why would anybody do a 4 or 5 cap? And in our area in Seattle, that's like super normal for commercial property and multifamily. I'm like, why would anybody do that? I get like a 50,000 cap, like over here doing single family BRRRRs or whatever, right? And so we did a 1031 into a commercial building that was like a 5 cap, but because of how much you rolled into it and how it all worked, I'm like, this all makes sense now. I get it. So, but that was the first time I felt like a grown up.
Where are you sourcing all your deals currently?
Good question. So we do most of our deal sourcing through networking with people that work with companies like yours. And they go out there and do all the acquisitions and so forth. And we spend a lot of time getting really good at our disposition and when we actually buy the properties, raising capital. And we actually have a lot of experience teaching people how to source deals, but the main reason why we do that and teach them how to use your guys' company and other companies like yours is so that we can get those deals from them and be like kind of like the main source that people want to send deals to. So, and then we'll just pay assignment fees, wholesalers. We don't pay nowadays. We don't buy a lot of properties on market in our neck of the woods because there's far too much competition. Even then, in the King and Pierce County markets in Seattle, it's off market's becoming almost more competitive than on market. So
really,
it's interesting. It's interesting right now. So to say the least, but that's where we get most of our deals.
Yeah, certainly a lot of people out there looking for deals, no questions. We want to dive in though to the kind of how you use data on the operational side and how you got to the point where you can do kind of the quantity of deals that you're doing. And, you have a fairly small team too, right? Doing all these deals?
Yeah, it's a very small team. And we have officially, the core team is me, my wife, Serena, and Nate. That's it. And
4 people.
The 4 people now, we've had a revolving door on other positions and like project managers, that sort of stuff. And we've just basically systemized our business to not need those type of people anymore. And it also redefined our buy box to where we don't need like when you do a $300,000 remodel, it's different than a $100,000 remodel here. So we just eliminated some of those headaches so that we could have more streamlined processes. And then everybody else is independent contractors. They're, hopefully they're not listening here, but they're all expendable, and so they better get to work. But it's part of scalability. One of the challenges I think most people, especially when they're newer to investing, or even when they're not, when they're a mid-level investor, they think scaling means only up. And so scaling also means down too. So, and how quickly can you scale up and down when you need to? And that's something we decided at the end of 2017, going into 2018, we wanted to have a business we can scale up and down like on a moment's notice. And just so we can have a better lifestyle too, and also less stress. And in case we wanted to shift our investment strategies or personnel, we didn't have this huge overhead, and we wanted to have basically less stress and more free time in our life. And that's what we did.
That probably served you really well here a few months ago with COVID.
Oh yeah. It was for us, it was like nothing changed. So to be honest with you, yeah, we're like, oh, well, whatever. I just didn't maybe buy that month or whatever. And we did have, not to get into that too much, but we did have about like a 2-week process when we had the lockdown up here, that all of our private investors that we basically raised capital through were like, can we not buy anything for a little bit to see what happens? And I'm like, no, we got to buy this one. But that was about 2 weeks where we're like, okay, well, everybody wants to chill for a second. But it was okay for us. It didn't change anything. Yeah,
that ability to scale is good. So there's so many pieces here to, scaling a business and getting it. What things did you focus on when you decided to kind of head that direction and make your business more scalable? Is there a process you took, or, give us some thoughts about the process you went through to do that.
So I love the name of your podcast, Data-Driven Real Estate, right? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
So okay, good. Even though we don't do a lot of data on the acquisition side, as far as like, marketing and, scrubbing lists down to where they need to be, like, and just getting like that one unique seller that you're looking for. We collect a ton of data on our activity. So pretty much I can tell you, since I started getting hardcore on it in 2014, really hardcore. But prior to that, like, I could tell you any property right now and show you any property I've done and over the last few years. And so any of them. And so you want to see like the pictures we took beforehand, I got them. You want to see the pictures we took while it's partway through the rehab, we got them, right? And they're all organized. You want to see the invoice we paid. You want to see the contract, the 6 bids we got, we have them, right? So we have everything. It's all stored, it's all organized, and it's all there. So, and we also use Asana, ASANA, to do our communication and project management between the team. So we document processes in there too. We document inside our Dropbox. We use SmartSheet, but so backing up to where we became so systemized is that we already had all this data, and we were constantly looking at what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Where do we waste our time, right? Where do we not waste our time? Where do we get the most reward? Where do we not? And we're refining all these processes. Where do we need people? Where don't we, right? What can we eliminate? What causes us the biggest headaches? What doesn't? But that took going through a ton of headaches and a lot of stuff to realize what we don't want.
Yeah.
But what I find a lot of people in my part, especially house flippers, they don't collect any of that data. Like they don't track their properties. If I say, hey, show, how many properties have you done? Oh, I've done 20. Great. Like, what did the 8th one look like? I don't remember. Right. So do you even have a photo of it? No. Right. It's just, they don't have any data on it. They have no idea how they got where they're going. So we've always done that. And because of that, we were able to go through it, especially at the end of 2017, and go like, okay, let's just take a single family home, right? We buy a flip. Where do we have the biggest stress? What's that one thing that makes the rest of the project a pain in the ass if we don't do it right? And get all the change orders and all the issues and create all the timeline issues, everything for the project. And for us,
see that like in Asana with like the number of messages going back and forth and that kind of stuff.
You can see it through there. You could see it through the timelines that we have. Like we've done the whole Gantt chart stuff, but like we just don't use them anymore. But you can see it through our photo histories because we store everything in Dropbox. And I would use Google Drive going back in time, but we're too integrated in Dropbox. But But you can see just from like the way we organize our photos in there, you can even if we weren't documenting it thoroughly in Asana, we used Basecamp a lot too prior to that. You can see that like, okay, well, the countertops took us 3 weeks to get in. Why? Right? Because it's the way it's documented in the photos. Or you can see that on the schedule that was in Basecamp and or Asana, depending on when we were doing the changes. So you can see all those things. But when we would also figure out just from the pain and hassles and stuff like that, of dealing with contractors, dealing with the change orders that would come up, and dealing with the costs associated with those changes, the holding costs, we'd have all of that documented. We'd know how much per day we were spending on all our holding costs. Like and it would be, we had it all charted out. But going back on the story, we found that like if you take a traditional single family home, after analyzing all this stuff, if we would just spend more time on the planning phase. So we buy the property and we plan it, or we know we're going to buy it and we plan it. And we just figure out before we demo it, before we trash anything out, before we get a contractor on site, before anything, what do we need to do on this project or have done on this project? So we know everything we're going to do on the project, and we could start mapping it out correctly. So that way we could skip all the issues later down the line. Whereas most people in my industry, they just buy a house and they just go, they trash it out, they demo stuff, and all of a sudden they shouldn't have demoed something, or like something got missed and there's a change order and there's something hidden, and there's like, it just goes on and on and on, and they have all this chaos. And so we said, screw that. We'll know everything about the property before we even touch it. Right. Even floor plans, like even if we don't change the floor plan, we still make a floor plan. Like it's all in there. So we can just deal with it fast. And that saved us so many headaches when we just spend that extra week. Right. It's that whole sharpen the axe mentality kind of a thing, that extra week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, right, before we even touched it. The other part of the data we found too, because we tracked it, out of all the contractors we had the biggest issues with all the time, is always our electrician and our plumber, no matter what, like period. And if you're in this business, you're always trying to save as much money as possible on construction and rehab as a house flipper. And a lot of house flippers say there's no good contractors. I'm like, well, no, there's a lot of great contractors. You just won't pay for them, because you want the cheaper guy. But what we found is that those two subs, we'd have a GC for everything else, but we'd sub out the plumbing and electrician. Those two subs caused the biggest issues for us all the time, and the longest delays, the most change orders, the longest costs. They'd piss off everybody, and it's because we always went for lack of a better word, the cheaper subs of the plumbers and electricians. And so we go, well, if we just, based on that data, we saw that we can track it. We had the communications. We saw the schedule getting pushed out. We saw the GCs leaving the jobs because the plumber pissed them off. And like, we saw all that, and we go, well, that plumber cost us $5,000 for the job for his bid. Right. But in reality, he cost us $8,000 or $9,000 because of extra holding costs and change orders and this, and pissed off the GC, like, or whatever, or the electrician too. So what if we just paid $7,000 to get better plumber that showed up on time, did their stuff, and got out? And we did that with that same thing with the electrician. We paid a little bit more for both. We found the right ones, and it saved us way more money because we had that data to see those are the two subs screwing everything up, right? So pay more, and it actually saved us more, way more over the long run. And that changed our entire. It was so weird, but those two things from 2018 to 2019. Changed our entire construction business big time, just from those two subs, and just knowing that data to know that was causing an issue. That was a long-winded story, but I just kept going. Sorry.
No, it's a great example. Yeah. I found that true in a lot of things, right? Like even attorneys, like my favorite attorney is ridiculously expensive. He's 4 times what everybody else charges, and he finishes everything in 1/10 the time and saves me so much money.
Exactly. Like our electrician, he says he's going to be on there on Monday, rewires the whole house by Tuesday, right? Plumber, same thing. We replums the whole house within 48 hours typically, right? Versus my older plumber, which he doesn't listen to stuff. He's still a friend, but like he'd take 2 to 3 weeks easily to do the same thing. And then like, oh, I got to come back because I got this other job and like this. And we're like, we got shit going on. Like, come back, right? And then it just doesn't matter. But it's paying that extra, it saved us so much more over the long run. And we wouldn't have known that if we weren't tracking it.
Okay, so lots of data going into driving operations and operational efficiency, right? Like around the contractors and that side. So you mentioned some tools, right? Sounds like Asana is your primary communication kind of task management tool, right?
Yes.
You're keeping all your photos in Dropbox.
Yeah. All
you can do.
So Dropbox, all files stored there.
Okay.
Asana, all communication and task management, and then we use SmartSheet as well.
Okay.
So in SmartSheets, that's where we store all of our templated things like our scope of works, our accounting hard cost sheets that we track for every property, because not everybody needs access to my QuickBooks. So we track it all through SmartSheet instead, which is then connected into the scope of work. And then we also track all of our finished packets are built through SmartSheet as well, which is kind of another way we systemized our business. Is we can right now go into SmartSheet, open up that file. Every finish we've ever done that we like is organized in 3 different templated finished packets, and we can go in there and just check a box on each one we want, and then click print as a PDF, and only the checked box ones come out, and it has a signing part for the contractor to sign at the end of it. So it's systemized big time.
For our folks who are listening and maybe haven't heard of SmartSheet, it's kind of like Excel or Google Sheets, except a little bit on steroids, right? Yeah. You can also kind of use it as a database. You can kind of use it in all these different ways, and it's a pretty powerful little tool for sure.
I want to be very clear. I say this to everybody because they're like, "Oh, I'll get SmartSheet." I'm like, "You're gonna buy it, you're gonna open it, and you're gonna be like, this is just Excel. This sucks. Why did I spend so much money on this?" And you have to build it, or you have to pay for somebody else to build it. So it's and then when you get it right, it's freaking awesome. But
have you guys thought about building and selling your SmartSheet templates?
Yes.
Is that a business, templates for SmartSheets?
I've never looked it up, but I definitely have had it on our to-do list to look it up. So
yeah, because for websites there's templates. For all these other things there's templates, and I know a lot of folks use a Podio template.
Yeah, Podio you can license out. Like you can license Podio out. You can get it. You have to get Citrix part of it and a few other things, and then you can actually license out your Podio template. And
I'm curious now if SmartSheet does that. There's an opportunity there, I think.
They should allow you to white label it in some way and then sell the template. Yeah.
Do all of your contractors have to sort of plug into the technology that you're using? So do they use Asana?
So there's 2 versions of the story. One was the past, right? In the past, yes. And in the past, when we were doing higher volume in multiple states during the wild and wacky REO days, for us, mainly 2011, 2014 was the most of our REO we ever did, and bleeding into 2015. But during that time period, we used a program called Buildertrend, and that's because it doesn't matter why, but basically we were part of another business that worked with Fannie Mae for construction purposes that we used Buildertrend to track all the subs and contractors. So we just bled that over into our construction, and it was easy for contractors to use Buildertrend at that point, but it's expensive now unless you're doing high volume and you really are running the construction. Buildertrend's not worth it. But it was simple. It was simple for the subs to use. They knew how to use it. I am terrified in my neck of the woods. I know my contractors, they're all great guys. Some of them would be able to use our Asana very well. Some would absolutely mess it up. So we're like, let's just not include them in any of that stuff and just have some checks and balances that they have to uphold on their end, that they have to turn in and they have to follow, and more simplified version of what they need to do on their end. So that way we can track it on our side.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think it would work with a lot of the more business savvy contractors, and not to make fun of Washington State contractors, but
I think that's definitely difficult, because if they're doing other jobs, it's not just yours. So everybody has their own process and own program. So I was just curious.
Yeah. If they were doing, if they're just doing one job for us, then that's just that's a waste of their time and they'll go somewhere else. But when we were doing the REO, like big time REO stuff between 2011 and 2014, we'd have contractors that have 20, 30, 40 projects. We were their business, right? So therefore they would plug into our system. And here in the Seattle market, there's so much competition for construction and contractors and stuff that, unless you can feed them 10 or 15 projects at a time, then they're not going to plug into your system because they don't need to. So, yeah.
Do the contractors typically like that you're so organized? Is that a tipping point for them to select you as somebody to work with?
I like to think yes, and I'm pretty confident that's a yes. But it goes both ways, and it's Some contractors don't like that because they like to be the one in charge of the project and how to teach you how to do it and charge you what they want to charge you. And they don't like that, what it costs them per square foot to do XYZ thing. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of contractors that don't like that because they'd rather just tell you that it costs like $800 a square to replace a roof when it costs them, their cost is like $140 or whatever. So like, they don't like that, that sometimes. But a lot of the contractors we work with love it because they just want to work, right? Typically our best contractors we found through data, right, is also they have bags on, like they're able to work on it themselves. They have a couple people on their team, but they really don't like to market themselves. They don't have that business side to sit there and go put out their own marketing. And they would love to work with a company like ours that says, here's your stuff, here's your scope, here's your finish sheet, here's literally the entire project. You just follow ABC, right? Here's your draw schedule. And here's your timeline for when to complete it. Sign the contract, right? Sign all our stuff. You don't need to worry about any of that crap, right? And they go like, cool. And then they just go do it and they get another house afterwards. And they don't have to market themselves, right? That's our favorite contractor. And we're their favorite clients. But that's not every contractor. So.
That's so true, right? I mean, there's so many of these folks that got into the business because they loved doing that work.
Yeah.
And they don't love marketing. They don't love sales. They don't even know how to do it, right? And so that repeat business where they don't have to do that piece is pretty attractive.
And you're out of California. So like the California state contractor laws are very, very different than Washington state. So California, you kind of have to have a business and no business to have a contractor's license, right? So because it's a lot of work to get it. In Washington, it's $115, a background check, and 30 minutes waiting in line with no testing whatsoever, like at all. You literally just fill out a form and wait, and then you walk out able to build somebody's house. So that's our licensing up here. That's why.
But I definitely
You're not joking?
Not joking. So if you want to get, I don't know how much you want to go down this rabbit hole, but labor and industries here is like a racket. I think they're like the mafia, but they straight up, they had a law, so labor and industries here had it's not a law, it's their regulation, whatever you want to call it, that if you flip houses, you had to have a general contractor's license in the state of Washington. And they only recently changed a couple of years ago to where you can flip houses without a GC license, but you have to hire a GC and you can't sub anybody out unless you are a GC, right? And so now how do you become a GC? What did I tell you? Pay $115 application fee. Now you have to have your license and so you have to have your insurance and your bond, right? So you're basically actually technically paying about $1,200 total for an annual insurance, your bond, and your application fee. And then 30 minutes of your time in an L&I office, and you walk out ready to build people subdivisions. And so
I think in California, it's 2 years apprenticeship or a college degree in a related, field like construction management or something like. So that's a big difference.
Not here at all. So, yeah.
Well, you mentioned something about you find your contractors using data. What did you mean by that?
So backing up on it, I don't know if I said that exactly. I said I don't know how I said data, but I said I'm able to find out.
Tell who's good and who's not.
Who's good and who's not. There you go. Like
okay.
on our stuff from the data, but not from sourcing them.
Okay.
So the sourcing of it just comes from referrals, talking to other people, that kind of stuff. And I guess that's data, right? So referral points. But on the other side, we do have every single bid we've ever received from anyone is stored for the last however long I've been in business. And that also allows us to take that data to start averaging out what the cost of things are. And that's something that we were pretty big on too, because I didn't, as a newer investor that had to learn how to do construction, I didn't know anything about what it should cost. And per market's different, especially when you're in multiple markets. And so if somebody tells me it costs $2,000 to replace the flooring, well, how do I know that I'm getting a great deal or not a great deal, right? And then you do enough floors and you collect enough bids and you get enough contractors out there, you start to realize, okay, it is $2,000 for a great deal, right? And I'm on track for that. So what's the average cost per square footage then? They're charging me. Okay, they're charging me $2 per square foot for this floor, and that's the average cost of this area for a decent contractor to do this for me. So let's put that in our scope of work, so we can know now going forward for future houses that it's $2 a square foot for this type of flooring for these houses, and we could confidently bet on that before we buy the house. So that's the type of data we definitely track with contractors all the time.
We've talked a lot about contractors. I want to talk both about how you've used data on the acquisition side in terms of maybe tracking your wholesalers, and then on the other side, on the sales side too. And if you're using it, where else you're using in the process. So you're building these relationships primarily with wholesalers, bringing you deals. Are you tracking how each wholesaler deals kind of perform or that kind of thing? Or what are you doing to validate the properties they're bringing you, figure out what to pay them, what a fair fee is, that kind of side?
So we don't, to answer directly on one side, we don't track saying, okay, this wholesaler brought us 8 deals and they've all performed this way. We haven't gone that far with the wholesalers, because for me, it's been if I agree to buy it and something goes wrong, it's not the wholesaler's fault, it's my fault. And so so that's why we don't really care which wholesaler brought it to us, because we have our own due diligence, our own stuff that we got to do. And once we buy it, then it's on us, right? At that point. So
everybody bring you stuff. That's cool. Not going to worry about that side.
No. And
how about the data and looking at the properties before you make that decision, and how quickly are you able to do that?
So it used to be slow and it got faster. But what we found is if your buy box is really big, I think it takes longer. But if you really narrow down your buy box to what you are going to focus on, it becomes a lot faster, because you can say no to everything really fast. And so I've felt that we used to have a bigger buy box, which was a pretty general term of 15% plus cash on cash in King, Pierce counties and Portland. And as long as I wasn't doing an addition or a pop top, then we would buy it. So just basically left it open to interpretation for everything else. And
we use the term buy box a lot, but just for folks maybe who are tuning in for the first time, right?
My buying criteria, right? So
your buying criteria, right? And is it mostly around, the return on investment, or is it also square footage or location or number of stories or price range?
When we're doing a big portion of our volume, right, it was typically just ROI, right? Return on investment. And we had a few other categories of geography. And we also had a few things of mainly we won't do anything that's going to require a 6-month permitting process or something. So you're leaning towards so I wouldn't be able to do a pop top, which is, take it up another story. And I wouldn't do anything that increased the footprint of the property. So by doing additions on the sides, because those took longer to get permits. But if something had an unfinished basement or unfinished attic space, that's not adding footprint, and that's not doing a pop top. So therefore we would do it. So, but if it fit that single family, 15% plus cash on cash in those geographic areas, and wasn't a pop top or additional footprint, that left it open for everything else. So didn't matter what. But what that also did is it made us have to spend a lot more time. We didn't have any limit on remodel cost or anything like that. So it made us spend a lot more time having to figure out, okay, well, can we handle this? Can we not? What's the construction? Can we find everything detailed about it? Okay, this is a $300,000 project. Do we have time for that? This. So versus we changed all of that dramatically for us. And we also bought a lot of properties, because that's a big buy box. We were able to buy a lot in those numbers. But it made it to where we weren't focused on any one thing or any one location. So we were able to just go, which also meant we weren't specialized in any one place either. We'd have investors in the core areas of Seattle, which would be actually it doesn't matter. If the core areas of Seattle, let's just say that. So where they would buy a house that I'd pass on because I'm well, I don't know if that would work out for us, but they'd buy it because they knew that those couple city blocks super, super well, right? They knew that data of that area. They knew a Starbucks is getting built right next to it, or they knew that a Metropolitan Market, which is a fancy place here, is getting done down the street, or that the zoning just changed recently and that it's worth more because of that. I didn't know that because we weren't tracking that specific neighborhood. We were tracking large geographic areas. So that answer your question in a really, really long way. Back in the day, no. So we would just have that big, huge, broad brush strokes and buy, and it always worked out. Now we're more specific. And so now we want a more specific deal, more specific rehab. We want multiple exit strategies. We're looking for more of an infill situation inside cities when we can. How can we develop 2, 3, 4 potential investment strategies out of this one deal? How can we get more focused? And that part of that is because we don't want as much work, and we just want to be higher margin, less work versus back in the day, it was lower margin, more work. So, because we would just do more deals,
And part of how you got there was looking at all those past deals.
Correct.
And figuring out where the best returns were with the least amount of work.
Yes.
And then kind of focusing on that. So kind of data driven there.
Very data driven. And because if you want to add, there's not just the data of what you get from these properties, it's also the data of what you're getting internally in your business. So even on your financial data, like what does your financial data look like? And in 2016, we did a lot of properties for Seattle, right? If you do more than 10 in a year in Seattle, you're like top 5, just so everybody's clear on that. But so in 2016, I think we did close to 40 in the area. 38, I think, was the number in 2016, something like that. And in 2017, we did roughly the same amount of numbers here, but we did more bigger projects, bigger potential reward, higher margins, all this kind of stuff. But we also subbed everything out with contractors, and we brought everything in-house. I had higher overhead. I hired more people. So at the end of the day, my business's revenue was a lot higher. I think it was almost like 40% higher than it was in 2016, right? Revenue wise. However, I personally made the same amount of money between the 2 years. And
and you worked a lot harder for it. I
worked a lot harder with a lot more stress, a lot more overhead, and a lot more bullshit, for lack of a better word, like for managing some of this stuff, and a lot more, way more stress. And that was one of those triggers too. If I didn't have that financial data and I wasn't tracking it like thoroughly and tracking all our properties, what the average time completion, the average rehab cost, the average holding cost, the how much effort, how many staff were involved in those projects, like all that kind of stuff, how many contractors we had going back and forth, everything going between, comparing the two, then I might have thought, oh, this is working out, let's keep going, right? But it wasn't at all, right? And so that was another switch at the end of 2017 that gave us that, desire and push to start changing things dramatically in our business so we can actually have a better quality of life.
How'd you have that realization? Did you read like the, Tim Ferriss book or something, or what led you to that epiphany that this was happening?
So I'm a hardcore personal development guy, right? I don't read real estate books at all. All my books, if you see, if I turn my bookshelf, like, which is facing, I'm looking at it right now. It's all leadership, personal development, and some more fun books, but most of it's leadership and personal development. So, but Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek is definitely, there's 3 books that I recommend to people for my system, which is 4-Hour Workweek. It's a checklist manifesto by Atul Gawande, and then also The One Thing by Gary Keller. So those are 3 books that I'm like, you put those 3 together, that's what I do. That's what we focus on. But the realization click was towards the end of 2017. We did a ton of projects. We had a bunch of delays. We had a lot of stress. We had a lot of internal costs. We were paying for literally like nails for a contractor, when in 2015, I got super pissed off because we bought light bulbs one time. And I'm like, why are we buying light bulbs? Like, that is dumb. And because we wouldn't even touch any materials whatsoever. That all of a sudden, fast forward 2 years later, we're literally, as a contractor at Home Depot, calling my project manager to buy nails, right? I'm like, how did it get to this, right? And so we had all that stress going on. We had way more costs, we had accountants, we had all this, bookkeepers, we had multiple project managers, we had a bunch of acquisition stuff going on. And we weren't making enough money, right? And I had oh, that's right, I remember now. I was finally going to start keeping some of these as rentals. And one of them, right, was a super cool property in Tacoma that was ready to also either be rented out or sold. We had so much overhead going on and so much money out from all these construction projects that we would make about 78 grand or 80 grand if we sold this single family flip, right? But I wanted to keep it as a rental because it would have cash flowed like $600-700 a month. But at that exact moment, I'm like, we need to sell this house so we can keep feeding the machine of our operations, just from a timing of a cash crunch at this point, like for this like little 45-day window of time, right? And I was so pissed that we had to sell that property in order to keep the machine moving. On top of my project manager, I found out at that time was stealing from us and embezzling. He was getting bids from a contractor for 2 and putting it in for 2,800 or whatever, and then keeping the difference, and things like that started happening. So common in this business. I don't know a single investor that's been around for a while that doesn't have that story. Yeah. And you also lead towards, my wife and I weren't spending enough time together, right? We really wanted to be together. She worked at W2. We weren't working together at the time. I had my business, she had hers. And it was like, there was a bunch of other stuff, but then it led to a buddy of mine, Thatch Nguyen, who's awesome dude up here. He said he had a realization in his business about a decade ago, where it's just like, most people design their business and they build their entire life around their business, and whatever time they have left, they revolve it around that, right, for their lifestyle. It's like, why don't you just design the lifestyle you want, like, and how you want to live your life with you and your family, and then make your business molded to fit that, right? And at that he said it at the right timing, right situation, right circumstances, and I'm like, why the hell aren't we doing that? That sounds so easy. And it was just like, what? And so I rush home, talk to my wife. I'm like, this weekend, we're going to put your paper out and we're going to draw out what we really want in our life to be like. And we just started saying, okay, well, we want to make our money this way. We want to run our business that way. We want to contribute this much to charity. And we just started doing it. And what do we not want to do? And we started cutting out, saying, I don't want to do these type of projects anymore. I don't want to be in these geographic locations. I don't want this type of overhead. I don't want this kind of staff. I personally don't want to do these things in my business at all. So I started doing the not to list, like the not list. And you also part of that data, because we found out these type of projects suck, right? So for us, because our systems didn't work for them. So let's go back to what we're good at. And we started mapping that all out, spent a few weeks doing that. My wife quit her job, came, basically to work with us. And we've been together every single day since then. And it's what we love to do. And our whole business changed, like, dramatically. But it came to that switch of a lot of things going wrong to lead to something right.
Your t-shirt's a little cut off, but that seems like there you go, right? Like, discipline equals freedom.
Jocko Willink.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. We're getting close on time, and I did want to talk about the sell side too, but maybe we'll do that next time. You give back a lot. You do a lot of speaking. You also put on an event in the Seattle area that's getting pretty big, and maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so now it's worldwide.
Right. Virtual.
In 2016, December 2016, we decided to do our first meetup, right? And I was like, we should just go meet more people. By the way, we never talked about this, but I hate real estate. I don't like real estate that much. I had a business coach tell me years ago, the reason why I'm good at real estate is because I don't like real estate. So I figure out systems and processes so I don't have to do it. Right. So that made a lot of sense to me at the time, because I've only done real estate for money. I've never done it for any other reason. That's it. And so now it's like, so anyways, but I love helping people figure stuff out. I love networking. I love meeting people. And so I'm like, let's do a meetup so we can meet more people. And so we did that December 2016. We had 110 people show up with 2 weeks notice. And I'm like, I guess people want to do a meetup, right? And then the next one, we had 220 people show up in January. And then it just kept going and going and going. And then we were like, why don't we do an event in Seattle? Nobody runs a conference in Seattle for real estate investors ever. You always have to fly to Arizona or somewhere in California or on the East Coast. And so let's do one, right? And we called it the PNW Big Badass Real Estate Wealth Expo. And so our first one was 2017. We had 510 people there. Our second one was 2018 with almost 700 people there. And then our last one, 2019, we had 1,000 people at that one. We raised, between the entire events, we've raised $350,000 for charity so far, and for specifically the Travis Mills Foundation. This year, we were on track for about 1,500 people based off of, because it's now the largest and most successful real estate conference on the West Coast, for real estate investors specifically. And so we had all this great stuff going on. It was like massive networking events, like parties, like 70 sponsor exhibitor booths, like full on exhibitor thing. Then this whole, cold shows up and makes it to where we lock down the US, right? And we can't do the in-person event anymore. So it's now switched over to virtual only. We weren't going to do it unless we can facilitate networking. So networking is the main reason why people do go to conferences, from my experience. And virtual events kind of suck because you're just doing a webinar for the most part. So we solved that with some software, and so we paid a lot of money for it, to where now any attendee that joins this can network just like we're doing right now on Zoom. They can set up their own community boards, their own networking sessions. They can have as many people as they want a part of it. Same thing with exhibitors. So we're able to do these at least face to face. You could FaceTime by click a button any attendee that wants to with you, right? You can't just like blast people. And it's all designed so people kind of have these facilitated networkings that we're going to help out with. Plus 40 plus speakers. Bigger Pockets is a part of it now. They're an affiliate with it. So we expect somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 people coming up September 18th and 19th. Most of it U.S., right? Not Seattle, because it's pretty wide berth now. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's September 18, 19. You can go to virtualwealthexpo.com or you can go to pnwrealestateexpo.com. It takes you to the same place. Okay.
And wholesalers in the Seattle area that want to sell you a deal, the fixatedrealestate.com?
Fixatedonrealestate.com. That's our networking meetup group and stuff like that. But you can also just go to my Instagram at Tarl Yarber. I'm the only one there with that name. Or find me on Bigger Pockets, right? Send me an email there too, and you'll get a hold of me sooner or later.
Great to have a unique name. You see that in public records a lot, right? Like a unique name is pretty easy to find, and non-unique.
It's good and bad, actually. So
yeah, for sure.
I don't know how to find you.
Yeah, I can never do anything wrong. That's for sure. So yeah, just find me. But
all right, Tarl.
Aaron, any other questions for you?
One other one, just because it's marketing related. When you decided to hone in your buy box, did your wholesalers follow suit and change their marketing box as one of the biggest people that they would flip their houses to?
Some did, because some already had like large businesses, so they didn't care. They just would adjust. It's like, okay, cool, Tarl's in this buy box now, so we just send him these type of deals, right? And then other ones, the ones that were like feeding us the most, they started trying to adjust for that as much as possible. But in reality, in our neck of the woods, in our market, there's so many people that will just buy the property, and that if we don't have those relationships, then we won't get the deal, because they can just email it out to a bunch of other people like me that will just buy it, right? So we don't. Back in the day, I was more spoiled, right? Nowadays, I can't be as spoiled. We have to continue to foster those relationships and build people up. And newer investors, newer wholesalers tend to like us a lot because we can show them when they send us a bad deal, we'll tell them why, right? So they can get better at it and so forth. But it also, typically, they know if they're going to send it to us, we are going to close if we say we're going to close, and they don't have to worry about that portion of it. But there's a lot of competition out these days, and that's okay. So.
Indeed. Nope, that's all I've got. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here. And everybody else, keep tuning in to the Data Driven Real Estate Podcast. Appreciate you listening in.
And good luck with your event, Tarl.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Data Driven Real Estate Podcast. You can find show notes and links to some of the resources mentioned in the show at datadrivenrealestate.com. Click that Join the Community, and you'll be forwarded to the PropertyRadar community, where you can ask questions about the current show and even see upcoming guests and ask questions there. We'd love to engage with you in the community, so check it out. Please don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform where you're listening to the show. It helps us out a great deal. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.